She walked into the courtroom calm, collected, with the kind of confidence you don't usually see in someone facing life in prison. Just 19 years old, Mackenzie Shirilla sat there like she was untouchable, almost as if she believed she was about to walk free. Some in the room whispered that she looked smug. Others thought she looked simply hopeful. But one thing was clear. She didn't think this day would end in chains. She thought she was going home. Then the judge pressed play. A single video lit up the courtroom. The silence was suffocating. Every eye locked on the screen. And what it showed changed everything. A car speeding at 100 miles an hour. No brakes, no hesitation. Just steel, concrete, and death. When the clip ended, the air was heavy with the truth no one could deny. 2 young men were gone, their lives stolen in an instant. And the driver, the girl now trembling in the defendant's chair, was the one who had put them there. This is the chilling story of Mackenzie Shirilla, the suburban teenager whose deadly decision turned an entire community upside down. But was this a tragic accident fueled by reckless teenage impulse, or a calculated act of murder? To understand how this moment came to be, we need to rewind. Strongsville, Ohio. A quiet suburban town outside of Cleveland. It's the kind of place where neighbors know each other, where Friday night football games pack the stands, and where teenagers spend long summer nights driving around aimlessly with the radio blasting. Mackenzie was one of those teenagers. On the surface, she looked like any other high school senior. She was bright, bubbly, into fashion, always posting TikToks and selfies with friends. Online, she projected an image of confidence and fun, a smiling girl cruising through life. But behind the carefully curated posts, Mackenzie's life was more complicated. She was in a turbulent relationship with 20-year-old Dominic Russo. Dominic was street smart, good-looking, and popular, the kind of guy people noticed when he walked into a room. But their relationship was rocky. Friends described it as toxic, volatile, full of arguments that would flare up suddenly and dramatically. And in the weeks leading up to that fateful night, the fighting had reached a boiling point. On the night of July 30th, 2022, Mackenzie, Dominic, and their friend, 19-year-old Davon Flanagan, spent the evening together. Nothing about the night suggested the tragedy that was about to unfold. But in the early hours of July 31st, around 5:30 a.m., surveillance cameras captured something chilling. A silver Toyota Camry appeared on Alietta Drive, a deserted stretch of road in an industrial area, far from any neighborhoods. The car slowed, circled back, then accelerated hard. Within seconds, it was hurtling down the street at 100 miles per hour. And then, in a flash, it slammed into the side of a warehouse with catastrophic force. The sound was like an explosion. Metal twisted, glass shattered, and concrete trembled. When firefighters arrived, the scene was devastating. The Camry was crumpled like an accordion. Dominic and Davon were pronounced dead at the scene. Their young lives ended instantly. Against all odds, Mackenzie survived. Her injuries were not life-threatening. She was hospitalized, alert, and responsive. And that's where the questions began. At first glance, many thought it was a tragic accident. A teenager driving recklessly, losing control, making a mistake that turned fatal. But when investigators started looking closer, cracks appeared in the story. There were no skid marks on the road, no sign of braking, no evidence that Mackenzie had tried to stop or even avoid the crash. Then came the car's event data recorder, the black box. When investigators pulled the data, the results shocked everyone. In the final seconds before the crash, the gas pedal had been fully pressed to the floor. Mackenzie had floored it, reaching 100 miles an hour, and not once did she hit the brakes. The crash wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, but why? That's the question investigators set out to answer, and the deeper they dug, the darker the story became. They combed through Mackenzie's phone, her social media, and her text messages. What they found painted a picture of a young woman unraveling. She and Dominic had been fighting constantly. Friends described their relationship as explosive. Witnesses testified that Mackenzie had threatened to harm Dominic before, even saying she would crash the car to end it all. Most thought it was just emotional teenage talk. But now, those words seemed prophetic. Investigators discovered chilling surveillance footage from days before the fatal crash. It showed Mackenzie driving the same road, following the same path, circling in the same area. Prosecutors would later call it a trial run, evidence that the crash was not a sudden impulse but a carefully considered act. For the families, the news was unbearable. One of the most heartbreaking moments came when police showed up at Dominic Russo's home. His mother opened the door to officers standing grim-faced. The look in their eyes told her everything before a single word was spoken. She collapsed to the ground, screaming in disbelief. Her cries echoed through the neighborhood. "Not my son, not Dominic," she sobbed.
So there was an incident that we believe Dominic may be involved.
What?
When was the last time you saw him?
Last night.
Last night?
Yeah, everybody was home. Why?
Okay.
What happened?
You want to come out here?
Yeah.
Right now,
Okay.
All we know is that the driver, who was Mackenzie, is at Metro.
Right.
Okay. Hold on.
So yeah,
Just stay seated, please.
take the time.
Please,
There you
just
go.
relax. Take a deep breath.
That's
Take
right.
a deep breath.
That's right.
It doesn't break the bracelet, please.
You got it. You got it. No,
Thank you.
you got it. Okay, just keep your hands right here.
Clutching tissues, holding each other's hands. The judge presided over a bench trial. No jury, just one person deciding Mackenzie's fate. Prosecutors laid out their case. Mackenzie used her car as a weapon, turning it into a 3,000-pound missile. They told the court this wasn't reckless driving. This wasn't a mistake. It was murder.
This trial is a culmination of decisions made by one person, the defendant. Those decisions have forever altered the futures of 3 families, and of you also.
They pointed to her own words, her threats, her deliberate choices. They showed the black box data. 100 miles per hour, full throttle, no brakes. The defense painted a different picture. They said Mackenzie was just a child, a grieving teenager who had no reason to want anyone dead. They argued that she suffered memory loss, brain trauma, and couldn't remember anything from that night. They suggested maybe she panicked, maybe she overcorrected, maybe Dominic grabbed the wheel. They tried to cast doubt, to make the crash look like an accident. For a moment, their story almost seemed convincing. But then the video played. The surveillance footage rolled again. The silver Camry hurtling toward its fate. The impact, the devastation, and the courtroom went silent. In that silence, the defense's story crumbled. The evidence was too clear, too damning. This wasn't panic. This wasn't a mistake. It was a mission of death. On August 14, 2023, Judge Nancy Margaret Russo delivered her verdict. Her voice was steady, deliberate, each word cutting through the courtroom like a knife. Mackenzie Shirilla, guilty on all counts. Murder, intentional, purposeful. The judge said, this was not reckless driving. This was murder. Controlled, methodical, deliberate, intentional, and purposeful. As the words sank in, Mackenzie broke. The confidence she had carried into the courtroom evaporated. She sobbed uncontrollably, her face buried in her hands, her body shaking with the weight of her fate. She had believed she was going home. But now, at just 19 years old, she was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. The families of Dominic Russo and Devon Flanagan wept. They spoke of lives cut short, of futures stolen, of sons and friends who would never grow old. Dominic's mother said, "She was part of our family. We loved her, and yet she's the reason my son is gone." Devon's family echoed the heartbreak, calling him a young man who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The community was divided. Some felt sympathy for Mackenzie, a teenager whose life spiraled out of control, who made a reckless choice in a toxic relationship. Others saw her as manipulative, playing the victim after deliberately causing the deaths of 2 young men. But in the end, the court's decision was clear. Mackenzie Shirilla's crash was not a tragic accident. It was murder. And so, this case leaves us with haunting questions. How does a teenager go from TikToks and selfies to standing trial for murder? Was Mackenzie a broken girl acting out in the heat of emotion? Or was this a cold, calculated plan all along? 2 young men are gone. 3 families are shattered. A community is scarred forever. And a teenager sits behind bars, her life destroyed by a choice she can never take back. You've seen the footage. You've heard the story. But now the question is yours. Was justice truly served? Or was this a case of youthful recklessness punished too harshly? Because in the end, this isn't just a story about Mackenzie Shirilla. It's about choices, consequences, and how a single decision on a dark Ohio road turned into a tragedy that will never be forgotten.